Hey guys, Stealth here, and welcome to Transport Fever 2, the successor to Transport Fever, and the game is coming out very soon, or rather might already be out by the time that you're watching this. Transport Fever 2 does a few things a hell of a lot better than it does Transport Fever 1, so let's go over a few of them. To start out, if you started with a new game, the game now has a map generator, and not just that, but also a map preview. This allows you to very quickly see what sort of map you're going to be facing, what sort of terrain you're looking at, and using the sliders for hilliness, water, and forests, you can very quickly adjust the map to your liking. In case you don't like water at all, you can go for no water whatsoever. If you want it to have an easy chance of getting a couple of good routes in, recommend sliding the transportation of or the segments of hills down to nothing. This is not all, you also have medium maps, large maps, or even very large maps. Now currently I'm on a medium map, I have 12 towns and 72 industries. If I go to very large, that's going to change dramatically. And I'm also quite surprised at how quickly the map generates. Look at that, 21 towns and 129 industries. Also, I'm currently set to high, that is on towns. I could switch towns to very high and industry to very high, and that is going to leave the map absolutely cluttered with opportunities of making money. 27 towns, 250 units of industry. This map selection, this way of generating a map that fits your size, your goals, your objectives for the particular type of industry or company that you want to set up, this is something that Transport Fever 1 just didn't have. Especially the map overview, the map preview is fantastic. I really, really like that. Number 2, tropical maps. Tropical maps are something new, and tropical maps are a lot more ship-friendly than other maps. Of course, currently, I have the water is disappeared and been replaced by an island switch. And you can set up how many islands you want, you can set up how many mainland you want, and of course hills. You could get a load of islands and set mainlands to none. By doing this, you're going to be almost exclusively using ships and potentially planes, come to think of it. Because planes would be a very interesting way of getting people from, let's say, this island up here in the north to the island here in the southwest. You could do it by ship, but they'd be in transit for quite a while. And you can do the same thing with the island slider and indicate how many islands you want. Maybe you don't want as many of them. Maybe you just like your map a little bit more mainlandy, so you have a couple of solid transport opportunities, like over here. In the middle of the map, we have a pretty big cluster of towns and a couple of sporadic outside objectives. But keep in mind that seeing how I have almost no mainland and only a few islands, the map is still 16 by 16 kilometers. But instead of having a ton of towns and a ton of industries, everything is cluttered here together. So in this case, I would probably go for a bit more mainland, maybe some more islands, and as such generate more towns and more industries. And by doing it, you get, of course, more opportunities. The game now generates a couple of inland lakes, and still you get opportunities to use ships, quite a few of them, considering there's 215 units of industry, so this definitely helps. And then you also have the dry setting. Now this is somewhere between temperate and tropical. Generally, I haven't really figured out too many differences between temperate and dry. But it is just another option. You're going to have fewer forests, you're going to have a little bit more in the sense of gorges and potentially more difficult to navigate terrain, but it does give you some very interesting options. If you increase the water, you're going to get a few more rivers, which again light up the map for ships. Alright, moving on. The third thing that they have massively improved from Transport Fever 1 to Transport Fever 2 is the way that the stations work. I have 3 different stations set up over here, starting with a truck stop, a passenger station, and an airport. In Transport Fever 1, it was the case that transport means from either cargo or passengers could be dropped off at a truck stop or a train station, but not both. So if you had a town, for example, I would be providing this town with a passenger route, I would need to build a separate train station to drop off cargo. That is no longer the case, as you can now set up custom stations. You start out with, in this case, a custom passenger station. This is the one that I have set up. Once you have one of these things, you can click on it and click Configure. And that gives you this overview and gives you a couple of different options. You can get more tracks, being of course standard high-speed tracks or high-speed with catenary, depending on what type of tech level you're at. But you can also add more platforms, including a cargo platform. This means that this train station now on a single rail line accepts both passengers and cargo. And this is such a massive improvement. You can make these things as big or as small as you want. You could go with a cargo building even. Medium main building with street access for cargo stations. So over here you would have a street access. And the street access could then be used by vehicles to get the transport or to get your materials from one point to the next. So I could go with, let's say, a medium street. Do it like that. And now I could have trucks go in here, pick up everything that needs to be transported, that is the cargo, while the passengers are traversing out on the other side. The same can be said for the truck stops. You can configure these and you have a lot of different options. You can add additional road connections. You can make these one-way connections, so they can be used as an entrance only. And you can have an entrance on one side and an exit on the other. You could have additional passenger terminals, so that the passenger terminals allow you to get additional stops in. In this case, I will have to remove these so I can add the passenger stations. But now I have a passenger and a cargo stop at this position. You could also get an additional cargo platform. And maybe you have, like over here, you have a larger terminal. Or you need a couple of these things. And you can make these as large as possible. As large as you need. This customization is fantastic. And it is a really, really good upgrade over Transport Fever 1. The same thing works for airports. This is the medium airport. This is the passenger airport with 2 runways for small and large passenger aircraft. And this too has the configure button and gives you a whole host of options. You can set up an additional main building. So if you have an enormous transport hub, you could have 2 terminals, which sure enough is expensive. Building a terminal building is going to set you back 1 million. But at the same time, it gives you more flexibility. Because by setting up a second terminal building, you could have a bus stop over here and a train station connected to that. You can have a passenger terminal. This is the smaller variant. You can also have a cargo terminal. And the cargo terminal allows you to also transport cargo from the same airport. Depending on your needs, you could argue that maybe having just one passenger terminal is not enough. Or vice versa, maybe having one cargo terminal is not enough. And maybe you need more cargo terminals. You can also get more hangars in, so if you so desire. I don't really know why you would want a second hangar, because one hangar should give you everything that you need. But the option is there if you so desire it. You also got the miscellaneous option, which gives you approach lights. This determines the approach and takeoff direction of the runway. So you could set these up and indicate where exactly planes are allowed to come in. So that planes don't fly a very unusual route and making it difficult for your airplanes to actually land properly. Now the same works for ships. So let's set up a standard dock. I'm going to go for a passenger dock. And it starts out as a small dock. That for the moment should be big enough. But over time the dock grows. And over time I need to make sure I have more capabilities here. I can make a large dock, but not from a small dock. That doesn't work. Although you can put in an additional passenger terminal. Or you can make a large dock attached to an initial small dock. And by doing it like this, your small dock, which normally only has one anchor point, now also has a position to add large landings. So now I can also fit large ships. And the same can be said for cargo. I can have a main cargo building, and the main cargo building can then be attached to a large dock. So you just have one building. You have one harbor, or at least it starts out as one harbor. And before you know it, you have a really quick, adjustable, flexible way of setting up your structure. Now this brings me to the next one. The next change from Transport Fever 1 to Transport Fever 2 are these lines. There are a lot of them, and these lines indicate where people are going to go, or at least what paths they have to take. Now over here it's not terribly interesting, because I know that they can use the sidewalk, and aside from that, not much else. But if I were to connect a bus stop over here, or rather a bus station, I would want to know how they could get in. If I do it like this, they can only walk in. But if I set it up over here on the edge, you can see that a couple of lines start to form from the side of the terminal. And that means that they can also get in through that angle. This is another very, very nice upgrade, because it allows you to quickly see what the building that you're placing down snaps to, and what sort of entry or exit ways the people have. The last one that I really like is that every town now has a different transport need. They require, in this case of Rawalpindi, it requires goods and machines. Previously, each town had the same requirements, but that is no longer true. Because while Rawalpindi wants goods and machines, Wuhan does not require either of those. It requires tools and construction materials. While some of you might like this or might dislike this change, I think it's quite a good one. Because initially, in Transport Fever 1, it was quite easy to set up a rail network that connected all the towns together and provided all sorts of supplies to everything. Because you would just need one big rail network to supply both Wuhan and Rawalpindi with food, for example. That is no longer possible. You would need to set up a different set of networks or a different set of contacts for Wuhan, because they need different materials. They need construction materials and tools. So this is another very, very welcome change. My favorite so far is absolutely the customization and customized options for your transport hubs. Whether it's an airport, a train station, a transport hub for trucks and passengers, you just have so many different ways of customizing the game to exactly what you need in a specific situation. And it is really, really nice to get this flexibility and to no longer need two different ways of setting up, for example, first a bus stop and right next to it a cargo stop. Right now you can do it all with one station. Alright, those are just some of the highlights from Transport Fever 2 over Transport Fever 1. These are my favorites. I hope you enjoy them as well by getting Transport Fever 2. Link down below in the description. I can highly recommend the game. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments, and I shall see you guys soon for more videos.